where Elihu, the new person, shows up, and he's a young man. And after a long and emotional dialogue between Job and his three friends, we've had this since chapter 3, right? I think, or a little bit after that. After the trials, that's when Job's dialogue started. So we've had a lot to cover, but now we've gone through that. After a long and emotional dialogue between them, we now meet this new character, Elihu. Elihu is younger, like I said. He's been listening silently to everything so far, but now he can't hold back any longer. He's very angry, not just at Job, but also at Job's friends. Why? Because Job, in Elihu's view, has justified himself rather than God. And his friends have failed to give good answers. So those are the two differences. So Elihu thinks Job is justifying himself rather than having God justify him. And then he's also angry at the responses because they did not give good answers. This chapter doesn't include Elihu's own teaching perspective. It doesn't include that yet. So this is entirely about why he speaks and how he feels. So it is a fascinating prelude that teaches us something powerful, when to speak and how to speak. So there's actually something pretty amazing about this chapter for us if we choose to speak. There is something here for us that applies to us. So, Job 32. So these three men stopped answering Job, because he was righteous in his own eyes. But Elihu, son of Barachel, the Buzite of the family of Ram, became very angry with Job for justifying himself rather than God. He was also angry with the three friends, because they had found no way to refute Job, and yet had condemned him. Now, Elihu had waited before speaking to Job because they were older than he. But when he saw that the three men had nothing more to say, his anger was aroused. So Elihu, son of Barachel the Buzite, said, I am a young in years, and you are old. That is why I was fearful, not daring to tell you what I know. I thought age would speak, advanced years should teach wisdom, but it is the spirit in a man, the breath of the Almighty, that gives him understanding. It is not only the old who are wise, not only the aged who understand what is right. Therefore I say, listen to me. I too will tell you what I know. I waited while you spoke. I listened to your reasoning. While you were searching for words, I gave you my full attention. But no one of you has proved Job wrong. None of you has answered his arguments. Do not say, we have found wisdom, let God refute him, not man. But Job has not marshaled his words against me, and I will not answer him with your arguments. They are dismayed and have no more to say. Words have failed them. Must I wait now that they are silent, now that they stand there with no reply? I too will have my say. I too will tell what I know. For I am full of words, and the spirit within me compels me. Inside I am like bottled up wine, like new wineskin ready to burst. I must speak and find relief. I must open my lips and reply. I will show partiality to no one, nor will I flatter any man. For if I were skilled in flattery, my Maker would soon take me away. All right, let's unpack that a little bit. Okay, so in verses 1 through 5, we see Elihu steps forward. All right, so these three men stopped answering Job because he was righteous in his own eyes. Verse 1. At this point, Job's three friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, have nothing left to say. They failed to refute Job's arguments or break his confidence in his innocence. But Elihu became very angry with Job for justifying himself rather than God. He was also angry with the three friends because they had found no way to refute Job. So Elihu is angry with both sides. He thinks Job is speaking too highly of himself. The powerful image here, though, Elihu burns with internal frustration. So he's been simmering in silence, waiting respectfully, but now he's ready to erupt. Verse 4, Now Elihu had waited before speaking to Job because they were older than he. Elihu shows respect for age and experience, but age hasn't brought wisdom in this case. That's what he's sharing. And in a sense, there is not really a correlation to age and age and wisdom. Sorry, it just depends on how you apply your understanding in your life. So there's verse 6 through 10. He says, age versus insight. I am yours in years. I am young in years, and you are old. That is why I was fearful. So Elihu begins with humility. He admits he was hesitant to speak because of his youth, but it is the Spirit in a person, the breath of the Almighty, that gives them understanding. Verse 8. So wisdom doesn't automatically come with age. It comes from God's Spirit. Elihu sees insight as a gift from God, not just a product of experience. And that's something we need to honor in what he's saying. But notice also that it's the breath, that breath of God that gives us that Spirit in us. And ultimately, as believers, we have the Holy Spirit, who is our breath, life and breath, literally. So great men are not always wise, nor do the aged always understand justice. In verse 9. So don't just assume someone is right just because they're older or experienced, and don't dismiss someone just because they're younger. So verses 11 through 14 says Elihu's disappointment with the friends. In verses 11 through 12 he says, I waited while you spoke, but not one of you has proved Job wrong. Elihu listened carefully, but he is frustrated, and the older men talked a lot, but they failed to engage Job's actual arguments. So there's a powerful imagery in verse 12, which he says, no one of you has answered his arguments, and they relied on cliches and assumptions instead of listening and responding thoughtfully. So they relied on cliches and assumptions instead of listening and responding thoughtfully. So in verses 15 to 22, Elihu can't hold it in. He says in verse 15, they are dismayed and have no more to say. The older men have fallen silent, and Elihu, he's full like a bottle of wine ready to burst. I am full of words, and the Spirit within me compels me. Verse 18. So like new wine, wineskins, they're building pressure, ready to overflow. Elihu isn't just venting frustration. He believes God is stirring him to speak. Sometimes we can make that assumption that God is stirring us to speak. But yeah, we're not saying that he is right or wrong in this case, but there are moments when the Holy Spirit does spur us on, and sometimes to speak, and sometimes it's just our own thoughts and mind. And so Elihu promises to speak plainly and honestly. He's not taking sides. He wants truth to prevail. So we'll see later Elihu responding, at least for next week. It's Elihu's last part, 3 chapters. There's a lot in his argument, and definitely he does get scolded later, but yeah. So tomorrow, okay, yeah, and that's where we'll end. So for tomorrow we'll do 33 to 35, and then finally the following week we'll start, we finish it'll be finishing Elihu's arguments, and then Job speaks. Now, since Elihu, I won't go into all the details yet, because we'll explore that. But that was a good section, great things. So some applications real quick before we head off. So 3 applications. Wait before you speak, but speak when it's time. So he waited till everyone paused. He didn't interject and interrupt people. He waited till there was silence. Elihu waited respectfully, but he didn't stay silent forever. So be patient in virtue, but silence isn't always golden. When God puts word on your heart, speak with boldness and grace. Make sure it comes with grace and compassion. Wisdom, number 2, comes from God, not just experience. So Elihu reminds us that age isn't a guarantee of understanding. Seek wisdom from the Spirit, the Holy Spirit. Don't let insecurity or pride keep you from growing or contributing. The third thing is speak the truth with integrity and not ego. Elihu's words are bold, but they're not meant to show off. He isn't trying to win an argument. He wants to speak for God. So when you step into hard conversations, ask yourself, am I here to be heard or to bring help and healing? So to encourage us in this last section, Job 32 introduces us to a passionate new voice in the story. Elihu, he doesn't hold back, but he also doesn't speak carelessly. He is deeply concerned with truth, justice, and the honor of God. And there's something admirable in his boldness, and something wise in his restraint. So may we learn to do both. Wait well, speak faithfully, as we prepare to hear Elihu's perspective here and his message in the coming chapters. Let's ask God to make us people who don't just speak truth, but live it gently and powerfully in every word we say.